Hello Mahara community, this is Christina and I'd like to show you the very first implementation of SmartEvidence, our way of having competency frameworks in Mahara coupled with an evidence map. Because we have not yet released Mahara 16.10, which is coming at the end of October, this is a preliminary view, a pre-release view. So there might still be a few things that change, but the majority of the functionality is already there. And because it's such an exciting new feature, I wanted to share the current status of it with you so that you can already imagine what it can look like. The feature will be experimental in Mahara, and therefore we are looking forward to your feedback and finding out what you like about it and what could be improved, what could be done differently, so that future development work on this feature can be informed by your feedback. So what does SmartEvidence then actually look like? Well, you might have seen a presentation of mine over the last year or so, briefly introducing that functionality, and now we actually have a working prototype. And here you see a portfolio collection that is a SmartEvidence collection. So like any regular collection, it consists of pages, and the very first page in this case is the evidence map. You can have a description at the top explaining what this framework is about, and then you have the map itself with the competency standards on the left hand side, with dividing titles or super standards, and then the individual standards below it. And you can again use headings to differentiate between different sections of the standard. In this case here, the example is the practicing teacher criteria in New Zealand. When you hover over the descriptions, either the standard or the substandard ones, you can see the full descriptions being displayed. On mobile devices you would be able to touch in order to display the description, and therefore always be informed in what you're looking at, what the standard is, without making the map busier than it already is, due to the fact that it is quite a large table. The second column shows how many pieces of evidence you already have that have been assessed as meeting the standard. And then you have the individual Mahara pages that are part of the collection, which contain the evidence that you want to map to the standards. So let's just put some annotations on the page to indicate that you have evidence on your pages for that. So you can of course do that via the Mahara page itself and put the annotations block on it, but in a lot of cases it is probably more convenient to do that directly here from the map. And simply click on one of the dots, the annotation block opens up, and then you can put in your annotation, which means explaining why you think the evidence on the page meets this particular standard. And you can have the explanation right there. Towards the bottom you see the standard being selected directly, and you also see the descriptor for the standard. You can save this standard, and then the icon changes so that you see directly, yes, I have already added an annotation there. You can add as many annotations as you want, and not just for different standards, but also map the same page to another standard, and continue with that in order to map all your evidence to the standards that you're currently needing to meet. If your collection is very long, you have the next and previous buttons in order to get to the remaining pages, while the standards stay the same on the left hand side. But because sometimes a collection could consist of 20 or more pages, therefore it wouldn't be possible to display all of them conveniently on one page. Now that you, as portfolio author, put annotations onto your page, your assessor can take a look at that. And so that would look like the following here. So I'm an assessor now, and I have access to the collection that the student Paula had created. So again, I also see the evidence map, and I see the items in which for which Paula has already put some evidence, and I can click them. I see the annotation. I can do my assessment, and I can also give feedback. And then the icon changes depending on what has been said. Or if I say yes, this meets the standard completely, then I can give the other icon. And if it doesn't quite meet the standard yet, then I can also change the icon to half complete. Currently, we have 3 statuses, namely that standard has been met, has been partially met, or has not been met. And the wording for these can, of course, also be changed by the administrator when setting up the competency framework. So for the items now that Paula has met one of the standards, the number changed so that this is indicated that she has already fulfilled one of the requirements. Now, what can also be done is that SmartEvidence can be used for self-assessment. That is regulated by the competency framework when it is being set up, so that it can be said whether students can self-assess or not, and then they can go ahead and do the assessment themselves. Now, how do you actually set up a SmartEvidence framework? Well, currently that is all done via a simple text file, one of which you can see right here. This is the one for the practicing teacher criteria. It has a name, it gets a description, which can also contain basic HTML. And then you see the choices, which are the assessment criteria: meets, partially meets, doesn't meet, just in the terminology that is relevant for your framework. And that also means that you can set up frameworks in different languages without having to worry that the terminology is only displayed in English or in terminology that doesn't work for you. And then you set up the individual standards with a short name, which is being displayed on the map, the correct full name, and then also the description. And you can also give priority depending on where it is, where in the order the standard is. Once you have set up your file, and more on that once we have the functionality available, you can go into the administration area and see SmartEvidence frameworks, and there you can add a framework. You already see the 2 frameworks that come with Mahara, namely the NACE Career Readiness Framework and the New Zealand Practicing Teacher Criteria one. They are there just as an example to get you started, but you can either delete them or leave them there, but set them to inactive. And when a framework is set to inactive, all the collections that have already used the framework can continue using it, but nobody else can create new collections using the framework, which comes in handily when a framework is updated and the previous cohort can still continue working with the old framework. Now, if you want to add a new framework, all you have to do is click the Add Framework button and then browse to your framework. In this case, I created a framework for PACE Path, which is from PACE University, and click Save, and then this framework is being added to the database. And your users can start working with it. So if I go to my portfolio as a student now, and let's say for this one I haven't actually started on my framework, I can see the PACE Path framework right there, and have my collection ready for the framework with the information that I need in order to fulfill it. So all other functionality of Mahara stayed the same, so you can set up a collection as institution administrator, for example, in order for your learners to copy it, and that will come directly with the framework. The sharing permissions still also work as they have worked before, and therefore the new functionality is part of the map and what you can do there, how you can work with it. So we hope you like this new development in SmartEvidence, and get the chance to test it once we release Mahara 16.10 in order to play with it, experiment it, test it with a cohort of students and see how it works, and let us know how things go. Thank you.